Okay, for this lecture, we're going to talk about designing new products. So, chapter 10 from the book. All right. Okay, so first thing I wanted to talk about that wasn't in the chapter, kind of additional, is this idea of first mover advantage. So, a lot of times when people are bringing something new to market, they get in a big hurry. And the reason is that they believe that whoever gets to market first is going to establish the brand, and then they'll kind of be the leader, and it'll be hard for other people to compete with them. Actually, history doesn't really bear that out. So especially if you're bringing kind of a new, exceptionally innovative product to market, it takes a lot of marketing and a lot of promotional efforts and education to communicate to the market what that thing is and why they should want it. So you often see that the first mover, the first sort of company to bring an innovation to market will spend a lot of effort and resources educating and promoting the idea that this is a good thing. And then there becomes a competitor on their tails that just kind of benefits from all those efforts, and it says, oh yeah, we're like widgets but cheaper, or we're like widgets with more protein. So essentially that's how it works. So you see lots of examples where oftentimes whoever the product pioneer was didn't end up being the current leader. Another topic worth discussing in this space is the concept of network effects. So oftentimes when people are making an argument about first mover advantage, they might argue that whoever is first to market will benefit from network effects. So the idea of a network effect is that the value of the product increases the more people are using it. So there used to be this technology called a fax machine where you would put in a piece of paper and dial up a phone number to another fax machine, and it would send the document to like a physical copy of the document to the office where the other fax machine was located. It's been a while since I've seen one, but they used to exist. And so oftentimes this is used as an example of network effects, because if there's only one fax machine, the fax machine has no value. There's not another fax machine to send the image to. Once there's two fax machines, now you can at least send messages back and forth. But at one point during the 80s or 90s, I guess, when there were millions of fax machines all over the world, then fax machines as a technology had a lot of value because you could send these letters all over the place. The same way we email documents today. Right? So this is sometimes used as an example. Another example that you might hear of is eBay. So eBay, you go on eBay and you can find all sorts of crazy stuff to buy. Like the value of eBay is greater the more people are using it. So it would be very difficult for eBay to have somebody come in and try to replicate that success unless it was with a very particular niche product, maybe. Just as a fun fact, eBay actually was started as an online marketplace for trading Beanie Babies before it grew into what we know now. But during the .com phase, a lot of companies, like spectacular failure companies like Pets.com that sold dog food and toys online, would say, "Oh, we have to be first to market, and because we're going to benefit from network effects." But the problem is, like, no one cares how many other people are buying dog food at Pets.com. We just want our dog food at a cheap price. So you often see companies claiming, trying to use network effects as a reason for having a first mover advantage in a place where it doesn't really belong. All right, so that's enough about innovative products and being first to market. Let's think about designing products. So who is traditionally responsible for designing products? So usually it is product experts. So it might be a chef, who's trained at a Culinary Institute of America, designing, innovative foam-based culinary experiences, or an electronics engineer designing a, piece of stereo equipment that has all sorts of different options for inputs and adjustments and this kind of thing. I have a app on my phone where you use it to you can start the hot water recirculation pump for our house, so the water is instant hot on. But in that app, I can also adjust every single useless feature that I would never touch with the water system. So it's like, I don't know who thought people wanted to do that, but I just literally want to press one button to get hot water, but it makes me go through this whole process. This sort of thing is indicative of companies experts designing things at the company, because they don't really understand. They understand the product better than they understand consumers, so they overestimate the need for innovation or complexity in these kinds of things. Sometimes you'll hear this type of development that happens kind of in-house, and a product is released on the market as waterfall development. So instead, of course, what we should be doing is if we're developing a new product, is we should be doing our best to put ourselves in the shoes of consumers. So we're going to want to do extensive research to find out what are the jobs to be done that are out there, and how might something we could create help consumers make progress towards one of those jobs to be done. So we might do some sort of, competitive intelligence, or, secondary research. So something you may find particularly useful for some of your projects going forward are Mintel reports, which you can access through the Clemson Library. So I thought I would just give a shout out to Mintel and tell you to check out those secondary research assets as you're doing projects in the business school going forward. Another type of research is called autoethnography. So becoming a consumer yourself. So back in the Mad Men days, there was this guy, David Ogilvy, who was sort of a famous ad agency CEO, and he would always recommend that anytime a copywriter was going to work on a project, that they become avid consumers of that product, even to the point where he went out and bought a Rolls Royce for himself. It's a convenient excuse maybe, but nonetheless, so he could, when Ogilvy and Mather landed the Rolls Royce accounts, so that he could really understand the perspective of a Rolls Royce owner. So, being a customer and helping put yourself in that customer viewpoint. You can also do some sort of ethnography where you go out and interact with customers, or maybe just find user groups online. You can either participate in those, or you can just kind of lurk around and check them out. But the idea essentially is, again, sort of ratcheting up our level of understanding of a particular customer group so that we can design something that meets their needs. At some point, we're probably going to want to talk to people. So we do this exercise in my service design class, where we have people, where we actually train people up on how to approach strangers and ask them about, products. These are called need-finding interviews. At some point, you have to talk to actual consumers. So this is a criteria, if you're in the entrepreneurship space, that you will be judged on. So how many consumers did you talk to? Do you have a feel for the marketplace, as evidenced by how much one-on-one research you've done? So I've participated in venture pitch, business plan pitch competitions, where the fact that somebody had talked to like 200 people was essentially what won them the pitch competition. Entrepreneurship, anytime people are bringing a new product to market, they want to know that you've talked to consumers and understand their perspective. All right. So switching on, our first problem is going to be empathize. This is a framework called design thinking. So design thinking, it comes from more sort of HCI, which is human computer interface, or design school. user experience, user interactions. From that sort of tech kind of designing computer systems and interfaces kind of space. And it has, as we talked about in previous videos, sort of evolved into taking on much more marketing and roles and sort of thinking about customer experience. So, as marketers, we're kind of over here on this side, evolving towards customer experience, and then sort of the design and tech people are kind of moving, and I think everybody is kind of converged around this idea that the importance of consumer experience. So anyway, this is design thinking is a framework from that sort of design space that talks about how to first empathize, with consumers in order to, define the problem, and then how to go about ideating solutions for that. There's another kind of model in here called the double diamond process. So discovery would be kind of our research stage. Then we are going to define the problem. Then we might brainstorm a bunch of different ideas. And then we're going to get one of those ideas into some kind of a prototype that we can test with consumers. So just so you're aware, there's a couple of different frameworks that are out there for product development, particularly in the tech space. One is sort of a lean approach, and the other one is agile. So these are often used in sort of programming environments. People are developing apps or software or CRM systems, but it can be used for anything. So it's just wanted to show you those to make you aware of them in case you hadn't come across them before. So they all have like their own sort of different terminology and ideas. Lean borrows from lean manufacturing ideas and their focus is always about kind of creating minimally viable products or MVPs to get out there in the testing environment. Agile is a little more software centric and has some sort of ideas around stand-up meetings, or what they sometimes call scrums, where you kind of gather the people around in a sort of a rugby style fashion and try to figure stuff out. But anyway, a lot of them, they're just out there. There's some ideas that are out there and terminology that are out there you should probably be familiar with if you're in business. But the basic process of both of these is kind of the same idea. And I would say that they've really brought to the forefront this idea in new product development that you're not going to get it right the first time. So the classic version was the waterfall version, where you created these sort of product development timelines, and you would execute on those internally. But people realized that people were building a lot of products that people didn't want. So in the last lecture, we talked about how 80% or more, depending on who you ask, consumer products end up failing. So what are we doing wrong? And the answer that kind of people have come up with is that we're not sort of empathizing with consumers. So we don't really understand where they're coming from. And we shouldn't be doing this process where we give them a finished product and hope that they like it. Instead, we should be creating just whatever as quickly as possible, getting something in front of them that they can test and give feedback on. It could be even a simple drawing or flip chart, or anything that you can get in front of 5 or 6 people and have them point out major flaws with it. Then the idea is you take that feedback, you go back, you design another solution, get a minimally viable product together, and bring that out. Or not even an MVP, but a prototype that you can test with a group of people, and then repeat and iterate that process until you arrive at something that the marketplace will accept. This idea also permeates through the field of online advertising. So there they refer to it as growth hacking, essentially an A/B testing. It may be 2 different versions of an ad or some kind of other promotion, and whichever one wins, they figure out, okay, now we're going to make a new version and see which one of those 2 wins, and then iterate and iterate and iterate. So again, there seems to be this kind of business has come to this realization that we're not going to do things right the first time. It's really hard to empathize with consumers. We're not good at it because we're these product experts. We have difficulty empathizing with consumers. And so instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of research and talk to consumers and figure out what they want and what their jobs to be done are, what they value, and these kind of things. And then we're going to try to get something in front of them that they can assess quickly and cheaply as possible. And then we're going to get feedback and reiterate that process. And that's going to be what's going to help us get to a product that won't be a failure. Yeah, so just a few more terms. Again, this might not have been on my radar even a couple years ago, but this kind of, the schools of design have really kind of evolved way into thinking about things that traditionally marketers was even sort of cutting edge for marketers. So I think kind of just being aware of some of these terms like user-centered design and human-centered design and design thinking are kind of useful to know that stuff's out there. All right, and so that concludes our kind of brief introduction to new products.